And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. This is the roundtable discussion for August 15th, 2021. Let's go to our opening statement. My opening statement, Miguel Cabrera has finally done it, and we can all now relax. Plus, we have a new update on Emoni Bates. Ed, what is your opening statement?
If I were to make an open statement this week, it would be that, yes, it is great that Miguel Cabrera was able to get this accomplishment out of the way for his own sake, for his own purpose. But now it's time to focus on the real important stuff at hand, and that is the continuing rebuild of the Tigers.
All right. Frank, what is your opening statement?
Well, my opening statement was Miguel Cabrera took care of one part of history that he was trying to make, getting his 500th career home run. And I think now that the pressure is off of him, that may actually be a good thing for the rest of the season. But the Tigers still got some work to do in the rebuild department.
Yep, they do. And then next year, they're going to try to contend. Chris Ilitch at least said so himself. So did Al Avila. We'll see how they fare in 2022. But before we get started with our podcast roundtable episode for August 15, 2021, I want to remind everyone the show is sponsored by the Viget Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Download it from the Apple App Store or Google Play and sign up by using the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B in the middle, as in billionaire. That's the Viget Sports mobile app where great fans cover. Sign up with the referral code STABLES with a capital S. Also, a shout out to Cali Tickets for sponsoring the Detroit Sports Rag, which we always contribute to first. Founded by the one and only Jeff Moss. You can follow him on Twitter at HowAboutIt91 on Twitter. Visit CaliTickets.com to visit Cali Tickets' website to purchase a ticket to a concert, sporting event, or a movie of your choice. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. Miguel Cabrera has surpassed the 500 home run mark. He's at 501 right now. He launched 501 into the upper deck, but let's get to his 500th home run. It was just over the right center field fence, short of the first deck, but it was enough to carry out Miguel Cabrera after 3 for 2 or 3 for something slump. He finally got that out of the way, and we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, Miguel Cabrera's finally done it, but he's still got milestones to go, such as 3,000 hits.
Absolutely. And matter of fact, in terms of the way of him basically starting since June with his improvement at the bat, stat line, and overall contribution to the team, he is getting closer and closer to obtaining that other legendary milestone, that benchmark of 3,000 hits. Some would say is an accomplishment that's even more prestigious than 500 home runs when you consider the longevity that it takes, the skill, and the concentration over time to get those consistent hits. So the fact that Miguel Cabrera is going to be approaching the short list of being one of few men to not only hit 500 home runs, but also 3,000 hits in the same career, that is a very exclusive short list. And Miguel Cabrera will be soon adding his name to said list. And it's looking quite likely the way things are going and the way he keeps it up, he can get that done this season before the year is out, the way things are going. So for Cabrera's sake, I'm glad, because for the last couple of years, we were able to see the injuries really pile up. His obviously not just his stat line, but his overall game was declining right before our very eyes. And this was the adverse risk of what him signing that massive contract extension was going to be. You knew it was going to be an albatross at some point, but the way it happened, it was just something for us to take grasp and take notice to. Now, granted, the Tigers, they could have done what the Angels had done to Albert Pujols, but they seem to be committed to finishing this out as long as possible with obviously how long Cabrera has been here in Detroit and how much the connection he's built with the team and the organization and the fans. So who knows? Maybe things will end differently for Cabrera on that end as opposed to how it ended for Pujols and with the Angels. But still, I digress. good for Miggy. Glad I was able to get this done. I think you could tell it was on his mind the last week as well, the way he was performing at home. He wanted to get it done. He really wanted to get it done in front of the crowd, which when you mentioned the fact that, consider the fact rather that it was all sellouts virtually with that, the amount of people that were limited to be allowed, but still, that place was packed practically every single night at that homestand just for the mere chance to see Cabrera get number 500 in front of them. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but if see it like this, right? If you're able to somehow get a hop, skip, and a jump over across the river to Toronto, you're able to see it in person there too. So, by the way, I just noticed something in terms of the fact that we beat them in '87 for the AL East title. Verlander threw his second career no-hitter, which basically kickstarted his MVP campaign in 2011. And now with Miguel Cabrera, further adding to his Hall of Fame resume by adding his 500th home run with the trivia question. What team did he do it against? The Toronto Blue Jays. So good for Miguel. Good for the team, too, because they were on a bit of a mini slump for themselves as well, losing a few of their past few games. But it just shows, again, there's still ways to go for this team in terms of what they want to really get to in terms of that next level of competing. Good on them that they are in the thick of it and trying to compete for second place. But starting with next year, I believe that you would have higher ambitions than that. So good for them to be able to maintain this pace so far, especially consider how horrible the month of April was for them. But there's still work to be done. Period.
Yep, there is. This season, the Tigers have improved, but they still have a lot of work to do before they can contend. Frank, your turn. About time.
Well, Ed pretty much said it all. I mean, look, Miguel Cabrera, you could tell getting that 500th really was something he wanted to do at home at Comerica Park in front of Tigers fans. And I think that was kind of weighing on him with his slump that he had been in. But once he finally got that off his back in Toronto, I think that's going to at least bode much better for him for the rest of the season. I think now he can focus on getting to 3,000 hits, which might be a stretch to do, but I still think it's doable. In fact, he did hit his 501st home run in St. Louis the other night against the Cardinals. But also the matter at hand is the Tigers have to get back to rebuilding and being a contending team. Now, I don't think they're going to end up getting a playoff spot unless something crazy happens. But, second place in the division, given the fact that April was just abysmal for them, and that's nothing to just shake a stick at. So one part of history got taken care of. Let's hope for the next one and hope that the rebuild just keeps on moving forward.
Also consider the fact that they were dealing with injuries to other players, namely Akil Baddoo, with this past few stretch of games as well. So the fact that they weren't able to get a win, get some wins in 3 of the past 4 or 5 games or so, speaks to, I wouldn't necessarily say their depth, but how they're able to have that next man up mentality that I think you can attribute to what AJ Hinch has been able to preach to them and what they've been able to buy into, which again will probably make another case for his potential status to compete for AL Manager of the Year. If not this year, then definitely next year.
Yeah, not to mention Nico Goodrum, who has suffered 2 injuries. So Nico Goodrum has been on now 2 injury rehab assignments now, and he's become more injury prone, and he's committed at least 8 official errors, which should have been 12 in my eyes. But he's not the only one who's made so many errors. Jamer Candelario, Jonathan Scope, Willie Castro, he's got over 10 or maybe 11 errors. Oh my God. The errors just keep mounting for at least a few of those infielders and outfielders. But for the rest of them, they haven't committed as many, which is good. So they got to. So those kind of players that had committed too many of these errors, they got to work on picking the balls clean, such as ground balls and throwing more accurately and such. And the defense just has to improve. And that's one of the things that you need to have, not just pitching and hitting, but defense as well. You got to have all those three things to be a World Series contender. And that's what the Tigers need to focus on next. Now that Miguel Cabrera has already surpassed that 500 mark, he's still got to get through 3,000 hits career-wise. But the Tigers got to get that World Series ring than just an individual player. So that's Tigers. Now for the Lions, they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers last Saturday night, actually, 26-20. Tim Boyle struggled again like he did in week 1. 7 of 15 for just 44 passing yards. He kept throwing into double coverage. And then David Blau took over, 12 of 17 passing for 143 and a touchdown, which is not as shabby as Tim Boyle. David Blau has proven more than Tim Boyle has combined in week 1 and week 2. David Blau should be the backup quarterback behind Jared Goff. But we'll go to Ed and then Frank. Ed, what were your thoughts on that preseason game with the offensive line, Penei Sewell, and the defense as well, and the running game as well?
Yeah, a lot to take in a way, because this is the second of 3, almost at the third of 4, because I'm used to seeing the dress rehearsal by now. But again, with the recent schedule adjustments, it's now 3 preseason games instead of 4. But from what I'm seeing here, there's still a lot to work on in terms of what this team needs, or not just depth purposes in terms of the key spots, but also proper efficiency. The fact that they're able to get torched up by Big Ben the way they did as well was concerning, I felt. They weren't able to get much pressure, for one. And in terms of the running game, which is obviously still a concern, you would like to say, for example, that DeAndre Swift is getting enough touches, but considering the fact that he is dealing with a shoulder injury at the moment, or excuse me, a groin injury, I should say, the shoulder injuries with Hawkinson, that makes things as limited as what you want to do in terms of your offensive repertoire and play calling. I get that, but you still got to find ways to work around it, whether it be using your other running backs or coming up with something else more efficiently, like what Jared Goff was doing last week with a short passing game. That could be something that works to their benefit, I should say. But again, nobody was expecting so much for this team. They knew this team was going to be mediocre to bad again, because whole new regime, whole new everything, including a new quarterback even. But there's one thing you can appreciate. It's guys at this point of the preseason, it's not determining, what are you going to do here? Well, man, we lost the game, we won a game. It's more so, how are you going to do in situations? What can you set up for what your team can do this season? And these players fighting out for those last few spots. And, we've been able to see it in terms of the wide receiver game and in the special teams department, those key battles starting to separate and showcase itself from the rest. So that's what Dan Campbell is paying attention to and focusing on, more than anything, I would say, if I were him, rather. But again, a lot to focus on when you still need to game plan around your opponent, get things ready for practice and camp the next day and whatnot, and still factor in, hey, between injuries to our guys, who's going to be on IR, who's not. With the season right around the corner, it could be stressful. So I don't envy Coach Campbell in any sense of the way.
No, me neither. Frank, before we get to Campbell's concern of DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson, I want your thoughts on that, how the players performed in that last preseason game at Heinz Field.
Well, it's pretty clear that David Blau should be the backup over Tim Boyle, first and foremost. The second thing, is it too early to consider Jeff Okudah a bust? Because he absolutely got burned in the game against the Steelers, and he got juked by a player who was 10 yards away from him out of his jock strap. So I'm starting to think that we may be seeing him not last very long here. Again, he could probably turn around and do better if he plays against the Colts or once the regular season rolls around. I know it's preseason, but the way Okuda has looked is definitely concerning to me. I'm not so sure that he could be in the long-term plans, but only time will tell in that aspect. So, and of course, as for the game against the Colts coming up, I think that it's just going to be a battle of who can make it and who's going to get cut and make the final roster. That's really all I got to say.
I even saw Okuda stumble one time, fall down and get back up.
Yeah, I think he's trying to achieve and live up to too much too soon. I understand, the whole first round pick, number 3 overall selection, but I think he's trying to he's letting that get into his head too much, and I think that's causing it to affect his play as well with his focus so tied up into that aspect.
Not to mention that he was a defensive back selected out of Ohio State, which has built a reputation for being defensive back with all the names they've put in the pros. So Okuda's trying to live up to that as well.
Yeah,
so
he's just got to relax. Just kind of relax and just cover his opposing wide receiver. That's it. That's part of his job.
I'll say this: I'm more than ready to give him to wait on him than I would have for Tease Tabor.
Me too.
Because you could tell immediately from the onset that was not a good fit at all. But from here, for what I could say, I'm willing to have a little bit more patience when it comes to Okuda.
Yep, me too.
Fair enough.
Frank. Yep. Now, the concern that Dan Campbell has: running back DeAndre Swift, like I mentioned before, a groin injury, and tight end T.J. Hawkinson. Forgot what kind of injury he has, but they were both in limited practice due to injuries, and it's concerned Dan Campbell. But the truth is, Dan Campbell has to put up or shut up and start using his head. I know it's his first season going in this year, but he's got to shut up and start using his head. He's got to be more of a strategist in addition to motivating his team. He's got to be a strategist with the clock management and playmaking, especially on fourth down, like 4th down and 1, for example. But DeAndre Swift and T.J. Hawkinson are two powerful weapons on offense. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, your thoughts on what I just brought up?
Yeah, there is some concern to an extent because, again, there's not that much depth for your team to have reliable, consistent backups at those two specific spots. So I could definitely see where Coach Campbell's concern will be coming from. But in terms of who's been able to get more reps in early on from one compared to the other, I would say I'm less concerned about Hawkinson than I would be for Swift. Even Hawkinson himself is confident enough that he's going to be able to be there for week 1. I think it's still a bit of a wait and see for Swift, but there is some optimism for him. He's been limited, yes, but I think the training staff, and there's one reason why I think the Lions made their changes to their training staff over the past week or so. So it could be one aspect of what they're looking into in terms of, hey, how are we helping our players heal up the right way, but also there's not any setbacks or delays to that timetable. So that is one detail to potentially look at. But again, I say it before, I say it again, compare with Hawkinson to Swift. I am less concerned about Hawkinson because it seems like, he's a bigger person, bigger guy, bigger body. He's able to take some of that, you would think by theory, and able to recover well enough. Swift is a smaller dude, smaller person. So again, his pain threshold may be different than compared to Hawkinson, but still, you got to look at it as his own separate case by individual case. But injuries are a part of the game. It's a matter of working your way around it and game planning to your best strengths, and making adjustments as a result.
All right. Yeah, that's true. And DeAndre Swift, I heard, is likely to miss week 1 of the NFL regular season. And but really, I don't As far as I'm concerned, the way I see that headline, it's probably no longer than week 1. DeAndre Swift may still come back for week 2, of course. Frank, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's just important that the Lions let Hockenson and Swift rest up and heal up and be healthy and ready to go for when the regular season rolls around. Keep in mind, with this being the final preseason game, they actually get an extra week of rest before the season starts when they open against the 49ers. So, I mean, I think Swift I'm a little bit more concerned about because groin injuries seemingly are tough to heal from. And as someone who's experienced shoulder injuries before, it really depends on how serious it is. But I think those are those are actually easier to recover from, provided that your shoulder isn't broken severely.
Right. Well, definitely, that's a no-brainer. You got to let your injured players rest. I mean, they've been in limited practice, but I think they should rest before the NFL regular season kicks off. Speaking of the regular season, the Pistons have released their 2021-2022 NBA regular season schedule, and you can look that up on Pistons.com. Of course, it's 82 games. Looks like fans are going to be welcome back into arenas. And then we transition to college basketball. 5-star forward Emoni Bates commits to the Memphis Tigers over a former committed school, the Michigan State Spartans and the Oregon Ducks. So Emoni Bates flopped from Michigan State to Memphis. We'll start with Ed, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, the Spartans got hosed. That's all I can say.
Yeah, there's not much to try and spin from this. This was a local kid, local product. His dad had connections to East Lansing. You would think this was a surefire shoo-in, as it would have been if this was Magic Johnson all these years back. But I think a couple of things. The fact that Imani himself initially that had decertified was looking to potentially do other ventures, whether it be playing overseas or playing in AAU or just going straight to the G League. That's how Jalen Green was able to, build up his stock to be get taken overall by Houston. But I think with the new developments coming within the NCAA, changing their bylaws and NILs becoming more and more frequent now and more available now, that might have factored Imani's decision to, hey, at least play a year in school, use that time and year to build up my brand and marketability, which will what, even though I'm already consensus number one draft pick for 2023, I believe, I can still build that up, that hype and attention and brand even more, and get myself a few dollars on the side as well. So I don't blame him. Like you're seeing it right now from Michigan to Michigan State all around. Players able to get their little side deals and sponsorships and everything else signed. Like, for example, I can remember off the top of my head, Hunter Dickinson. He's got a little sweatshirt brand himself coming out soon. So I think Emoni Bates was looking at all that saying, hey, I can get something for myself, still play basketball, and still be able to be seen across, national airwaves in America. So that way, when it's time for me to come to the league, everybody will know who I am. So I don't blame him for that. And I think that it's not necessarily a mark on MSU or Izzo. I think it's the situation of what appeals to him more. And when you consider the fact that you're already going to be playing with another top prospect in Jalen Duren, number one, and you're going to be this was just recently added out. We already knew that Penny Hardaway had been the coach there for years, but just recently, I think the past couple of days or so, former Piston Rasheed Wallace, he is joining Penny Hardaway's coaching staff as well. So factor all that into consideration. It doesn't surprise me that a person of Imani's caliber and talent would make this choice to go to this school.
Yeah, Rasheed Wallace, that's a name. Frank.
Well, as a Michigan State fan, I'm actually not disappointed at all that Emoni Bates didn't choose Michigan State, even though I would have loved to see him there. The thing is, he seems to be kind of a me-first guy instead of a team-first guy. And it kind of really goes back to why the Pistons ended up taking Cade Cunningham instead of Jalen Green. Not to get off the subject, but Jalen Green was a me-first guy and ended up throwing shade at Detroit and said, oh, I didn't want to come here anyway. Well,
Right.
if you've
Good
got
comparison.
yeah. So, I mean, if he was being a me-first guy and wanting the ball so many times a game, Izzo doesn't need that. Izzo wants to have a team. We don't need to have egos getting in the way of things because that's just going to put a wedge in the locker room, have guys picking sides, and Izzo doesn't want that. So, I mean, as for Imani, best of luck to him. I've had the honor to watch him play in person. He's very talented. So hopefully he can keep on the straight and narrow at Memphis and end up doing big things in the NBA.
Yeah, very good points and comparison about Emoni Bates being an individual person rather than a team player. So there goes that discussion. Now, last but not least, the Red Wings released their 2021 NHL preseason schedule. Their preseason opponents will be the Chicago Blackhawks, Buffalo Sabres, Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. 2 games each before they drop the puck on the regular season on October 14th against the Tampa Bay Lightning. They play the Seattle Kraken for the first time ever on December 1st at Little Caesars Arena. And then they visit the Seattle Kraken at the end of a 4-game northwest of the border road trip, along with the Flames, Canucks, and Oilers. They play the Kraken in Seattle on March 19th at 10 p.m. So that's the Red Wings preseason schedule and a preview of their regular season schedule as well.
Also of note, they decided to part ways with Valtteri Filppula.
They got rid of him. Darren Helm may be next. Darren Helm with the Colorado Avalanche. That's right.
Yeah,
Frank pointed it out.
Yep, Helm is already gone.
Yeah. So Filppula is now released. So
that
he's
now
kicked out.
That officially means now.
Agent.
Yeah. So yeah, Filppula. Yep. He decided he was not going to come back to the NHL. He was going to go play in Sweden. So that effectively ends his time in the NHL. And of note, by the way, gentlemen, that officially marks with the departures of Filppula and Helm. I believe that leaves exactly 0 people left from the 2008 Stanley Cup winning team.
The Yzer plan has completed phase 1, baby.
Yeah. Phase 1 was, phasing out of the past. And between that and Nielsen not being brought back, they're really phasing out all. Yeah, he was bought out. So they're really phasing out all of these picks that Ken Holland had made in the last few years of his time in Detroit. So that was definitely phase 1. You can clearly see that now.
Yeah, phase 2, time to improve with Alex Tanguay's new power play unit with Jeff Blashill as head coach.
And as well as some of Moritz Seider to get some serious playing time and show what he can do in the NHL.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there.
I really want to see how the defenseman unit makes any type of improvement this year compared to last year.
There's that too. So that's Red Wings, and that's everything we've covered. Now, the What We've Learned segment, covering everything that we've discussed tonight. What I've learned, in case Jared Goff has to be benched during the regular season, we pointed this out before. David Blau should be the Lions' backup quarterback, and Tim Boyle should just hang him up because he cannot play much under center. For the Tigers, now that Miguel Cabrera finally did his home run milestone thing this past Sunday, and he's at 501, like I mentioned before, the Tigers can now focus more on playoff contention for next year and try to get that World Series ring. It still may take a little bit more time, who knows, but the focus is on that. Ed, what did you learn?
From what I had learned this week, the theme of it is patience. Patience with what the Tigers are doing with their rebuild. Patience that Miguel Cabrera was able to get his 500th home run, eventually got it. Patience now that it's on to the next step of their respective rebuild. I think you mentioned Chris Ilitch potentially letting it known that he could very well spend in the offseason. I'll believe it when I see it. But if he were to do it, two guys to look into consideration: Carlos Correa, Justin Verlander. I'm just saying, not saying, but I am saying. But there's still patience in regards to that. Patience with the Red Wings, implementing their next part of the Yzer plan, getting their young players involved, getting Yzerman's proper DNA and imprints and fingerprints all into this entire roster. Patience with the Lions. I know we've been saying that now for God knows how many years, but it still requires that especially when you're starting out with a new faction, new GM, new head coach, new quarterback, new everything. And also you can extend that as well to the Pistons. The patience that you have to see that there were some bright spots and good things to look at during the summer league. But you have to know that's not going to come instantly once the regular season starts. So patience is still the key in terms of when it comes to all four of our sports teams getting their respective rebuilds done. Patience, patience, patience.
Yep. Patience is key as always. Frank, what did you learn?
Well, what I've learned is Miguel Cabrera was able to get one thing off his back with his 500th home run, and now he's going to be able to focus much more on getting that 3,000th hit with less pressure on him. Also learned that the Lions should tell Tim Boyle to get out, and that the Yzer plan is still rolling along, and who knows what's going to happen next once Phase 2 comes this coming season.
It's all going according to plan, and that is all that we've learned for this week. And before we go, the show is sponsored by the Vivid Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Download it from the Apple App Store or Google Play and sign up by using the referral code Stables with a capital S and the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B in the middle as a billionaire. Also, another shout out to Cali Tickets for sponsoring the Detroit Sports Rag, founded by Jeff Moss, on Twitter at HowAboutIt91. Visit CaliTickets.com to purchase a ticket to a concert, sporting event, or a movie of your choice. Gentlemen, excellent job as always. We'll be back next week, probably. Fred Smith and Frank Vajner. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow Frank Vajner on Twitter and Instagram at Frank_Vajner. And follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. And like it on Facebook as the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Thanks very much for listening, watching, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Power to the people. Hit them with a high when we rest our case. Stay out of trouble.